Also, anybody who filled out the higher education or OPI forms, just put them on the desk and we'll get you guys a copy so you can take one home. We'll have to send them in as a group, but we will provide you guys with your own copy. So we'll start off our next presenter. Kenneth Tuffy Hagelson is a Nakota language instructor at the Hayes Lodgepole Schools. He's been an instructor for the past 13 years, born and raised in Lodgepole, Montana. Spent the majority of his young life with his grandmother, Dora First Chief Hagelson, and countless other Nakota speakers on the Fort Belknap and Fort Peck reservations. Also in Mosquito First Nation, Carry the Kettle First Nation in Saskatchewan, Canada. Tuffy is active in many aspects of the Indian way of life. He, along with his wife of 8 years and their 3-year-old son, are involved with community involvement type organizations in Lodgepole. His belief in language and culture are the driving force, and he truly enjoys his work. I'd like to just add a story of when I met Tuffy and Helena. Dustin Monroe invited me to speak on a bill Jonathan Wendyboy was pushing through for language. And after I seen Tuffy present, I realized he was truly what would say Gipitaki-Puka. It's a grandparent's baby with all the knowledge. And we're really honored to have him speak here today. So I'd like to announce Tuffy Hagelson.
Ada lucia biniu hana daya hibi abet ne wami ono emangi achenwa sewa pagichta ambane hana koni abishecha wakna git ne dago e chamo dago sprema kia bichen mikushi ne chijana honga uya chijia you hana chande washte news abichen you hana yo. Again, my relatives, I'm really happy to be here to share and learn along with all of you in this great endeavor that we've all taken up. I really don't claim to know anything. I just try my best with a little bit of information that was shared with me. And I want to thank Ophelia for the beautiful words that she said yesterday. I was sitting way in the back in the corner there by my Blackfeet relatives because they're all crazy. They always have to sit back and make sure they don't raise too much. But as I was listening to Ophelia talk, and she talked about the journey that she's been on through her lifetime, it really empowers me to, and I truly believe that we are in a time of a great change. And with all your endeavors and all the people that are working throughout Indian country, we're going to see this happen. Our languages are going to come back. Language is acquired. It's not something that you can learn over the course of 4 years or the course of 2 years in a college. This is something that is going to have to be a commitment of your lifetime. And I'm not a fluent speaker of our language by any means, but I know enough to get in trouble. That's the good thing. I wrote a few little notes out here. Like Jesse said, I've been teaching for 13 years, and when I graduated high school in 2002, my grandmother was 89 years old, and I was all set up to go to Northern. I was going to go to college, and that's a really a strange story in itself. My mother's a white lady, so I was born a half-breed. And about the first 8 years, 10 years of my life, my grandmother really didn't have anything to do with me. She kind of kept me at arm's length away because I was a breed. As she got older, and the bilingual program that Ophelia talked about, that was something that really impacted my life. By the time I was in 5th grade, I probably could tell you any noun imaginable. I just, whatever it was, I could label it. I didn't know how to put things together to make sentences, but I could label all of these nouns. And but as my grandmother got older, I remember one summer we were cutting hay. My grandma went to bed at 7 o'clock every night. No matter what was going on, she went to bed at 7. And I was moving a swath from one field to the next. I was driving. Must have been 6th grade or so. And I looked up and I see her door was open. And it was late in the evening, so I pulled in there and this big swather, and I go to the door and I open the door and she's laying there right in the doorway. She wasn't moving and I touched her. I figured she was dead, so I started squealing and I was like, Coochie, Coochie, and I was, all of a sudden her head rolled over and she said, give me a cigarette. She broke her pelvis and she fell and broke her pelvis and she laid there for 3 hours by the time I got there. The only thing she was worried about was a cigarette. I thought that was crazy. So I get her a cigarette, and from that time, because she was so crabby, I guess, I just pushed myself on her, pushed myself on her, pushed myself on her, and then through the course of my lifetime, she became my very best friend, and we went everywhere together. I really didn't do sports in high school. I didn't do too much because I was always with my grandma, and boy, she taught me a lot. So anyway, then in 2002, I graduated high school, and her health was really failing. She was 89 years old. So I decided that I would stay there and I would take care of her until she went on the other side. And we were doing that. There were 3 of us, my aunt, uncle, and myself. And then when people get older, they don't need to sleep. I don't know what that's about. She would sleep for 5 minutes and stay up for 4 days. And then she would wander around the house and she would fall over and hurt herself. So we have to do these, we just have to stay right up with her, and we had one of these hospital beds. I'd be laying there trying to sleep and the thing would start rattling. Let me have this son of a bitch, I had a horse. All of these things that my grandmother and I experienced. Well, anyway, the school year was coming up, and in Hayes Lodgepole there, we had a superintendent. His name is Dr. Philip Shortman, and he was for us, he's one of the most highly educated people from Fort Belknap. He's also a Vietnam War hero. I mean, he's got the credentials. He's a really impressive man. He's also my uncle. So he phones just before school starts, and he said, nephew, and he's really a matter-of-fact kind of person. He'll monkey around. I need you to be a teacher. And he hangs up. All right. So he calls the next week and he said, well, you ready to teach? I'm like, Uncle, I can't teach. I don't know. So he comes over and we're visiting and he's telling me all these things. You can file for this class 7 and you can do this and you need to be a teacher and on and on. So then he leaves and I was visiting with my grandma and she said, no. She said, you're half-breed. She said, you don't know enough. She said, that's important. She said, it's important and it's got to be done right. I was like, okay, fine with me. I don't really necessarily want to be a teacher anyway. We're getting closer to the school year and he's calling and calling and calling. Finally, his mother, who's my grandmother's first cousin, she makes a special trip out. So we cook and they're sitting there. And the conversation between these 2 ladies was really, it was an experience for me. She says, Dora, if he don't do it, who's going to do it? There's nobody left. She said, even though he don't know a lot, he can try. She said, this is where we're at. So this conversation was a long conversation. And finally, at the end of that conversation, my grandma said, okay, do it. She said, but you do it right. And those were some of the last conversations that I had with my grandma. So in my classroom, I have a picture of my grandma. Every time I'm up there talking, if I say it wrong or I do that, I'd look and I make sure, So anyway, yeah, give her a cigarette. So the things that I've experienced over the course of teaching and learning the language, I guess, is I was really fortunate just to have my grandma because when I was a teenager, there were still a large amount of speakers on Fort Belknap. And I can remember taking her to the Senior Citizen Center in Lodgepole, and that was the dominant language. That's what we heard, was Nakota. You go there today, and maybe 2 people understand, but it's not spoken. But also through that, with the resurgency of our culture and our spiritual ways, I've met some great people. My relatives from the Blackfeet country. I've spent a lot of time in Canada, because the Nakota people in the United States, there are about 3 bands of us. Fort Belknap, 2 in Fort Belknap and 2 in Fort Peck. The rest of us are located in Carry the Kettle First Nation, Saskatchewan Mosquito, just different places up there, kind of around the White Bear area. But I've also been able to establish connections with those folks, our relatives there, and you know, their speakers are limited like our speakers. So we've had this growing conversation over the course of my lifetime, I guess, to share with one another and learn from one another. So we still kind of have a base to go around and you know, ask for help when we get lost. And then the next one I have to tell you about is these people that are called Stony. These Stony people are the furthest out of the Siouan language group. They're just above the Blackfeet up here. And I can't understand them. They're my relatives, but I can't understand them. And it's really bizarre, because when I get up and talk, they can translate verbatim what I'm saying. They're right with me all the way. And then when they talk, I have no idea what they're talking. It sounds like Russian. But that's evolution of language, because they have so many people. They never quit speaking their language, and their language grew. So I think a lot of times they take our base word and then maybe they cut it off, or they added something else onto it. So we're left to interpret what's the rest of the word. I mean, I don't know what they're talking. But it's really cool just to hang around with it. Yes, every while. So through the bilingual program, the things that I learned as a very young child at school. Oh, sorry. So I went back to be the teacher the next year, and it was really awkward because I was sitting right next to them the past year, you know, in the English class. It was really strange, but the movement is there in our youth. They want it. They truly want it. They want to understand who they are. They want to understand their language. And it's up to us to do our best to facilitate that, to help them. Just like my grandmother said, we have to do it as good as we can. We have to do it as right as we can. Does that mean we're going to make mistakes? Yes, it does. So anyway, one of the first things that I learned as a teacher was you have to know what you're talking about. If you're going to be in a classroom for 50 minutes with kids, you have to know what you're talking about. It takes some thinking. I've worked at it. When I started, I was writing phonetic. And then my students were getting mad at me because every time I would write the word, I would write it different. They're like, but last time you said it was this. And so we would spend more time arguing about how it was written than we were actually what was being said there. Yesterday, this was a question. I heard, I think it was my mother, Lenore, would pose the question, you know, we're talking about phonetics or we're talking about orthographies. I teach language classes in the community. I teach as far down as kindergarten, and then sometimes work for the college also. What I figured out is we don't need to spend time arguing over those things. When I teach adult ed, I teach phonetics. When I teach in the high school, I teach orthography. My students can pick up in the school, my students can pick up any number of documents and they can read it. They might not know exactly what they're saying, but they can read it and it's pronounced as close to, or, you know, that's another thing my grandma used to tell me all the time. You said it right, but you sound like white man. And I used to think, that's not possible. But it is. It's very possible. So, for example, one of the things, this X represented the glottal noise. So they would say choda. Choda is the color gray. Well, then they'd also use this X and the same word. But this word is choba. So I guess to an untrained ear, it's the same noise, but actually they're two different noises. The first one is more with an H, and the second one is more with a G. So those are things that you don't pick up on unless you're actually really, really listening. So I opted later on to try to read and write in the orthography because I forget who was saying, I think it was the lady sitting here, they match our noises in our languages. Ironically, in the 90s, I was in those senior citizen centers with all these old people, and they were talking about how are we going to write our language. And I got to hear all that conversation. Our language was never written. You're going to change it. It's not the same. You know, then others were saying, but if we don't write it, how are we going to teach it? So I got to hear all of those things. And then we'll go on to linguists and anthropologists. Oh my God, these are some of the goofiest people I've ever met. So through the course of, and I was just telling Matt in the back there, I was just telling him, through the course of my work, as goofy as they are, they're very valuable people. They're very, very valuable people. If it weren't for the linguists in the 70s and 80s, if they didn't come and do the work that they did in our communities, there would be a big gap. There would be a big gap. And again, I was a little bitty boy sitting in my grandma's house. I started smoking when I was 10 because my grandma didn't have friends. So but I remember these linguists come in and they would say, Dora, we're going to record you. And they would set up all their equipment and all these things, and they would start. Then I remember my father, who was not a speaker of the language, came in at one point and they were doing their work and I was taking it all in and my dad blew up. And he said, what the hell are you doing here? And why do you care? What are you giving my mother? You're going to take this and you're going to go make all kinds of money off what my mother's telling you and we're never going to see it die. And I remember it was this big old fight and this anthropologist kind of started squealing and loaded up her stuff and she left. But I remember all of those conversations. As time went on, I actually had the opportunity to travel to the University of Indiana. I've been down there 2 times now, and I've actually been able to be a part of the process of translating from Nakota into English and, you know, reteaching these stories. I was also telling Matt that while we were down there, I got to travel with these old ladies. Oh, and they're so cute. But I like grandmas. Grandmas are cool. No matter what's going on, they're cool. We get there, and then in our custom, Nakota people, men kind of take the forefront. Well, my grandmas were 80 and 70, you know, they were sitting there and they should have been calling all the shots, but they'd sit there really quiet. So at the end of the first go around there in Indiana, it was just killing me. I was like, why in the hell do you guys have all this stuff sitting on shelves down here? We need it in Fort Belknap. That's where it belongs. They won't join in and help me. So finally, at the end of that, we brought a lot of this information home, and I've gone back twice, and we've worked on a lot of things. And that's where watching the folks yesterday talking about the board games, and, you know, all of these things that are made. Those are the next steps, and I'm really grateful to the people that are doing these things because today our children learn it. Even in this room, if you look around, people are still on their phones and everything. Well, those are tools. That's not the answer. Those are tools. 13 years of working in this stuff, I've wasted so much time trying to program that phrasalator. Holy, you guys remember that thing? This is going to save us. And I'm sitting there. And I spent more time writing, and you know, than it actually was applicable to our kids. So they are tools. Now, the next thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about was the importance of reading and writing. Like I say, our children we think different. And it has to be, for them, it has to be concrete. It has to look the same, it has to be the same, it has to be consistent. I don't know if I necessarily need that anymore. I just wanted to, here I am.
Push the down button.
Oh.
Do you need audio, Ken?
So I'm going to put Matt on the spot in the back there. This is my relative. It's also from Lodgepole. His grandfather, his name was Yamniape, 3 strikes, George Shields. And I didn't know George. I saw him once at a New Year's dance in Lodgepole. I was a little boy. I remember my grandma had me all fixed up. And I remember George come dancing by and had this big war bonnet on and his nice buckskin outfit and his big wing. And I remember I said, that must be Chief Joseph. But anyway, George passed away, and he was one of these people that were interviewed in the 80s. How come I'm not?
You're on a second screen. I forgot Max. Sorry.
So anyway, George was one of these people that was recorded and documented by the University of Indiana. And his mind was so brilliant. Even at his age, he was in his late 80s, and his mind was so sharp. And the things that he was talking about meant so much to him in his life. It was just phenomenal to listen to him go through and tell these stories. This particular story is the story of his grandfather, Pronghorn. And it's a 64-page document. Halfway through the story, or not even halfway, probably a quarter of the way through the story, he says, Jenna, he said, that's enough. He said, I'm getting sick. So they stopped recording. And this was in the 70s. So what did they have in the 70s? Those tape recorders, or, they couldn't just go back and see where they were. They had to rewind and all these things. He started to retell the story 2 weeks later, and he goes back 3 sentences verbatim. And he says the exact same thing 3 sentences before. And I was like, holy Christ, I can't even remember that in English. But this meant so much to this man. The story was so much that. But kind of what I wanted to show, and where I'm having a hard time, is as we get these things out to our students, it has to be concrete. It has to look the same. It has to sound the same. No, it's just. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyhow, we'll just go.
Apparently, there's an arrow up in the upper left that you hit.
Oh, there we go. There we go. That's correct. You're awesome.
That's all.
All right.
Your personal microphone.
So again, and I was listening to the folks from the Salish community talk about, I didn't pay attention too much in English when I was in school. I kind of thought I knew how to write a sentence. So then when I started really trying to figure things out, I was like, hey, what the heck is this verb? And this is a noun, and this is an adjective. So I had to relearn all of this stuff and how it was put together. And again, these things about you're not saying it right, that's not how my grandma said it right. I've never experienced that. In the 13 years that I've taught, I've not had one student come into my classroom and say, my grandma says it this way, my grandpa says it this way. That's scary to me because that means nobody's talking anyway. I remember when I was in the bilingual, my grandma says it, you're saying it wrong. So anyway, as we started working through these things, identifying words, you can't argue with George Shields. I don't give a shit who you are. You can't argue with him. He was 80-some years old in 1982 telling the story. This is as true a picture of language as there ever was going to be. So we started going through, and what I did for my students was I bolded the nouns, I italicized the verbs. And as we go through, now when they're reading it, they just take a little note, a piece of paper off on the side, they write down their verbs, or they write down their nouns. But it's within the verbs that we have to work. So this is, he says, on the spring day, I'm going to tell a story. So on the end here, that's my verb. And so then from there, we take this verb and we put it on a sheet, and they have to identify the root word. What is the root? And then they have to identify the person marker, the suffix marker. Is it in the present? Is it in the future? Is it in the past? How do we go? So they're able to go through and work with these things and play with these verbs. So anyway, at the end of this, 2 years ago, this 60-page document, it took us a whole semester to go through and actually get the story as good as we could get it. And then we had a play. The kids dressed up and they did the play, and of course there was narrators and all these things, and it was awesome. Quick and along of this story was I never knew smallpox sometimes ended in death because they broke their backs, because they coughed so much. I never knew that. I knew they would get smallpox and the fever would kill them. So even from our standpoint, there's a lot to be learned. There's a lot of things that we don't know. We don't know about. I don't know, and I'm not going to go through and bore you to death with this story. This is a really good story. This is like a movie. Really, I really believe this story should be a movie. It starts out in the Sweetgrass Hills, ends up by Battle River. He ends up being an orphan, traveling down to Poplar with just a bunch of other little orphans and an old woman. He ends up going to fight the Blackfeet, and he stabs a Blackfoot man. He steals a top, and this Blackfoot man is on his knees in a fire, and this little boy stabs him. He's 12 years old. He becomes a war chief. I mean, this is an awesome story. And again, would have never been possible if those anthropologists didn't come at that time and record that information. So I think a lot of our problems are trying to figure out how to get to those people in the best way we can without intellectual property rights and all these other things going on. I don't give a shit who gets credit for what, as long as our kids are able to understand their language and it's acquired. So you can see from this, well, maybe, I mean, I can see from it in my own experience, is when we get this in a 4th grade curriculum and the children are able to go through and read the story with the nice little pictures that are, you know, the artwork of our people or however we do it, you can see where that's really going to make a change. And I know the folks, the programming, the people, all of these people that are doing all of these important things, it's going to happen. We're going to see it happen. It's just going to take a little bit more time. My older brother, Terry Brocky, always says it took us 150 years to lose our language. It's probably going to take us 150 years to get it back. And we just got to keep working at it. My Blackfoot relatives, I love it. No matter where they go, there's always a contingency of elder people that lead the way. You know, they're always there. And I remember that from being a small boy attending different conferences and seeing them. Today on Fort Belknap, I was just writing them out. We have like 5 fluent speakers of our language. And those 5 people I spend oodles amount of time with, and they probably just hate me because, how do you say, what is this? But what I also found out was a first language speaker is very, very important, but that does not mean they can be a teacher. A first language speaker, it's natural to them. It just comes out. They can just say whatever it is they need to say. A second language learner has to understand exactly how these things are all put together. I think it's the combination of the two that would make a program, because the first language speaker is going to be so valuable in training this younger person. And like Mr. Monroe was saying yesterday, I think he needs to start thinking about running for Jonathan's seat, because these people, these people are pushing so hard for so many things that if we don't have Indians representing us on that level, we're going to slide backwards. So that's why it's important for our communities to vote. That's why it's important for people to get out there and run. The lady from Browning yesterday, the principal from Browning yesterday, you know, her comments are so valid, because we have this person that understands this particular part, but they can't apply it here because we're accreditation standards, all these different things. And I'm really curious. I want to make a trip to Browning to see how the kindergarten immersion program is going. Like the Salish, they just took off. Daryl Kipp, he just took off, and they're just doing it. I'm not that brave. But I want to see how it's turning out and what's happening, because everywhere we go, it's to make a speaker. Everybody's end result is to make a speaker. So does that mean if my student can pick this up and read it, pronounce correctly, is he a speaker? Well, we kind of ran that too. There was a man named Peter Bigstone, and he was from Ocean Man First Nation. He visited my classroom one day, and my kids just happened to be reading. He walks in the room, and they're all talking in it, and he's like, what's going on? But they're able to enunciate correctly. Again, my grandmother said, that's right, but you sound like a white man. So we put stress marks. We make sure we identify where the noise is, how it's happening. And it's been a real, for me, it's been so fulfilling just to see these things taken off, and it's going to take time. So I think a lot of times with our students, the Western thought process, for as much as we want to keep our identity, and it's just like my relative said, I opened a book, that's how I learned. I think that's where our students are now today too. We don't have that interaction with those grandmothers anymore. We don't have that interaction where you can just acquire language, you can just pick it up. Kind of, maybe not all the way. My adopted mother here, Lenore, her sons, Terry, John, there's 2 tribes on Fort Belknap, Gros-Ventres and Assiniboine. And historically, we were enemies, kind of. Well, they always don't tell the history, right? They just get everybody worked up and want everybody to scrap all the time. So anyway, through the course of growing, and again, the resurgency of our culture, growing within our culture and our ceremonies and different things, and helping one another back and forth, I would say I could probably last in an Ani conversation for a fair amount of time, because I've been around it so long, I've heard it so long, that when they're speaking Gros-Ventre, I know what's going on, I know what's happening. And so I think it's just, again, it's time. We have to have that time to hear those things and how language is acquired, how we're acquiring it. So sometimes we end up with pidgin languages. We was even talking about that, John and Terry and I said, maybe we just need to combine Assiniboine and Gros-Ventre together and just make our own language. And then but again, as we go through, oh, we're fine with it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still going to do this.
Okay. As we go through and we reevaluate where we're at and what's going on, you know, we talk about the trauma. Everybody talks about the historical trauma, and that's really there, and that really is a part of our societies. And again, if the truth be known, on Fort Belknap, there are 3 groups There's Nakota people, Aani people, and then there's Little Shell Chippewa people. Okay. Growing up in the community of Lodgepole, where I grew up, and my grandmother being the crabby woman, I think she was, and the racist, well, she was a racist woman. I was her own grandson, and I was half-breed, so I mean, that's kind of an indication of the kind of woman that she was, right? So it was, you stay away from those Gros-Ventres, and you especially stay away from those breeds. You have nothing to do with those people. Through this 150 years of Fort Belknap or whatever we had, it is so crazy. I mean, just the dynamics of the communities are crazy. You have this group here, this group here, this group here, and they're all bickering among themselves. And we just got to get over it. I was checking out, what is it, Saskatchewan? What's the name of the university there?
University of Saskatchewan or
Regina?
First Nations University in Regina or Language University in Regina.
So they have a website, and I got on there and I was listening to the Little Shell Chippewa language. And that's awesome. It's a Cree verb or Cree noun and a French verb all the time, and it's just it's pretty. We can teach that. Somebody can learn that. That can be offered in our schools. I mean, we need to find the sense of belonging. We need to find the sense of, you know, being together, helping each other, networking. I was sitting here thinking about how many of you have seen that 1930, is it 34, 32, Blackfoot, when they're all talking sign language, right? I'm glad this is being recorded because your great-grandchildren are going to look at this day the way we look at that day, right? So, and at that time we were speaking signs, so that also tells us that that's an important part of, that's an important key in how we're learning. And it's something that we need to bring back. I just wrote, I'm not going to take an hour. I know I'm not going to take an hour. I was just writing down a bunch of thoughts. From one language to the other, we have these crazy stories, and I should have started with this story. I have a good friend, his name's Harris Rock, and he's in his 80s, so he's crazy. He's one of these people that as soon as he sees you, and I know a lot of you get this, you striving speakers, you know, as soon as you run into these people that really speak, it's on, and as soon as they see, they're questioning you, asking you all the Harris tells a story, he said, and you're going to have to excuse me, but Harris tells a story. I just think it's neat to listen from one language to the other. He says when he went to school, he didn't have to go to boarding school. He got to go to school in Harlem, just across the river there. And he said there was about 5 of us Indian kids, and we were all sitting in the back. We didn't know what was going on. First day of school. And the teacher gets out these stick horses, and she's giving everybody stick horses, and she's got these little straw hats, she said, and that's the first thing we all us Indian boys, we were bucking around and calling up, oh no, we don't know what they're saying. So they teach us this song, My Home's in Montana, and we're all riding this horse around singing this. And at the end of the song, he said we take our hat off and throw it in the air, and we all holler like cowboys. That was my first experience at school. He said, so I get home, and he was one of these grandparent babies. So the whole house was full of people just waiting for him to come back. His aunts and uncles and grandmas, and they're all sitting there. He comes walking in, and he's just happy. Somebody says, hey, help me, Tago. I'll bet you that Tago was straight to get the hand. He said, oh, he said, that cool, somebody says. He said, what did you learn, grandson? He said, I learned I'm a cowboy. Really? He said, what do you mean? He said, I want him like that. Well, no, I want him to spray my kiabich. Hey, hell, they said. They taught me how to sing like a cowboy. Go ahead, they said. So he's standing there. He said, Wagadodo ni taogi no data. So she goes and gets her broom and takes it over. So Dad goes, gets his hat. He's singing his little song. They're all watching me sitting around. This is where it really gets preserved. At the end of the song, he takes his hat off and he throws it in the air and he says, "Wahoo!" In my language, when you say "hubin," that means to have intercourse. When you say "why," you're saying I'm the one that's doing this. So he throws his hat there. Wahoo! So as you, from one language to the next, you never know what you're saying until you're actually saying it. What are they teaching you? I think another thing that we need to do that is really, really important, and I see it in the high school kids at Hayes where I teach, if they have the opportunity to use it, they're going to use it. You don't go to the store and hear people speak their language anymore. Or we don't. I imagine they do in Crow, I imagine some Blackfeet people. You can still go and hear your language different places. You don't go to the restaurant, you don't hear it. We need to make places and reasons for our students to use their language. The governor came to our school last week. I don't know why. He was being nosy about something. He came, and our student delegates stood up. They introduced themselves in their language, their parents, where they live. They were happy the governor was there. These are non-traditional people, non-traditional students. But they know the importance of, like we're all saying, who we are. And I'm making that, identifying ourselves as who we are. So that's the other thing I think we're charged with is not everybody's going to go to the Sundance. Not everybody's going to go to the Sweat. Not everybody's going to go to the powwow. We're going to have to make reasons for our children to use our language. Maybe that means stick game tournaments. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. We have to be creative in how we make these places for our people to use their language. Our radio station on Fort Belknap, I always love it. I had a niece. She was about 10 years old. An older brother, his name's Buster Moore. He was on the radio. Every day you hear the same thing. He says, "Nakoni Albishka." Try to talk Nakota. My 10-year-old niece was walking around. Nakoni Albishka. You know, it's stuck in her mind. I don't know, but we got to build on that. We got to keep making those reasons for people to use their language. That's about all I got, guys. Any questions? Hopefully not.
Encore!
Oh, it's so crazy.
Mhm.
I want to give another round of applause for Tucker Hayes. I think our fried bread and soup chili lunch is about ready. We'll take a short break and we'll set up for our student panel. So if anybody would like to go check on the fried bread, we have some amazing cooks. So we'll take a short break and we'll set up for our panel discussions.
Are we gonna get everything paid?
It's
It's right there, that one, product placement.
One minute.
Good thing you're transit, Jessica.
Just, that's the Salish station. Yep.
I like your table setup.
It's on.
I didn't like your table setup.
Oh,
My daughter's
I
mother's
just realized personal, my space. And I had something else.
I live in Polson, so.
Gosh. So I asked him, I did it today. Can you-
That's good. It's nice to find that you're comfortable.
Yes, well, I get everything else.
I'm gonna try and get around. Make sure it's. Yeah, do we would break before the, and if we don't, do you break before the? I think so, I don't have that itinerary with me.
I did. Now it's gonna get slippery.
I make sure.
of bringing the language into the house And I think that's what really helped me to learn, books, and help me to understand our way of talk, our way of language, you know. But through language, I really gained an identity as not just Amskapapikanya, Blackfoot, but as a human being. You know, it's the connection that we have to this earth. And language is involved in every aspect of life. You know, it's not just new words, it's a perspective and a look at the universe through the eyes of that culture. As Native people, we are labeled as Indians already, put on reservations. In the outside world, they will constantly judge us by being an Indigenous person. But if we cannot understand what it is to be Indigenous, we cannot heal and we cannot share what it is to be Indigenous. We're just stuck with the label that the government gives us or what this country has given us. And I know in this country, we are misrepresented so often. Our identity is in crisis at times. We see it in our youth, in our homes. You know, there's sports teams, Redskins, Savages, you know, those are all dehumanizing words because that's what we were looked at. And if that's all we have to identify ourselves with, then we don't have a purpose, you know. Our first goal should be understanding ourselves. And the only way to do that as Indigenous people is through our language. But after graduating Immersion School, I went on and graduated high school. And I went to Uncle Sam's University of Misguided Children. And then I came back and pursued my education here. And the first thing I seen was this big facility of Native American Studies department. You know, and I thought it was so wonderful to see this much effort being placed on Native American studies. And I noticed there was classes on perspectives, ethics, spirituality, culture, history, but they're all being taught in English. And I understand we're losing so much by not learning our languages. You know, we can give a semester-long discussion on one word, Atsimoihikan, like our first presenter, Michael Fromboy, stated. Those are semester-long speeches on identifying one word. So when we teach these subjects in English, what are we losing in translation? What are we cutting out? And I don't think we're getting the full benefit, not only to Native people, but to non-Native people who want to learn more and understand our cultural ways. Our language is the root of our identity. It's the root of our culture. We can't have anything without our language. And there was a time when I first started, the only language offered was Blackfoot language here at the university. And through my second year, that class was lost. So when that class was lost, I realized there needed to be something done. And I got together with some students and some faculty members, and I talked about what we could do. So we created this group, Sacred Roots Language Society. And I wanted to call it a society more than a club, because in our traditional ways, the closest thing we translate to things that teach us is societies. And I wanted to structure this group as that of an Indigenous society, one where nobody's higher than anybody, everybody has an equal voice. You know, a society, we resort to our elders for knowledge. You know, we ask questions, we make mistakes. And when we started talking together, I noticed there was a wide spread of people who wanted to be involved. And the first thing we decided to do was, well, we need to have a fundraiser. And there's a lot of community involvement for health and wellness. So we put on a run to gain some money. But I wanted to see a conference of speakers, because I know a lot of the times, like was mentioned before, not everybody's on the same page. Everybody's fighting for the same goal, but on different pages. So if my group could bridge any two parties together, that's a success. You know, I encourage everybody to expand on this. You know, this is the first annual conference. We plan to do it many years, but every year I want to get better at this. But so yeah, I want to thank everybody for making it today. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. And thank you. I'll pass it on to my other officers. I have 2 more officers up here who would like to speak.
Hello, my name's Kenneth Flamand. I am the self-appointed war dance chief for our club. I had to fight to get that name, but I have it. And as mentioned before, I am maybe a little bit of a savage and passionate about what I stand for. And language is important. That when this club was in the beginning stages of development, I always feel from my heart that all of you are put out here in front of me for a reason, that I'm meant to meet you somewhere in here. And it just so happened I was on the webpage for the university, and I usually just go straight to the one that I need. And I just happened to put in the main page, and there was Jess looking up and pointing with his lips or whatever. And Jess, hey, I know that guy. So I clicked on the caption, and he was starting this club, and I said, hey, I want to be a part of that. So I started getting a hold of him and figuring out what we can do. That, you know, education is where my heart has been for some years, and I started out as a substitute teacher and moved into early education at the Head Start at the Confederated Salish and Kootenai, and I had gained a lot of perspective on education, and also seen that need, that there was that limited amount of language, and trying to come through this framework. And as I worked through that, I knew I needed to have this end filled as far as the education part, so I could be that person in that level. But I also wanted to maintain who I was for my identity. And through all these speakers that we've had, we've talked about, you know, the cultural barriers to successes, and what has happened in the past, and how we have these problems with identity, and people wanting to hold on to what they have left, and being selfish about sharing that, which is, you know, a definite problem in trying to promote a language when somebody doesn't want to share, or they're scared to share, and for all the reasons that they have. And I seen that at the Head Start I was at, and it was amazing. One little boy, he was really energetic, and he was always bouncing around, and I always had to talk to him, and I'd tell him, and I didn't know any Salish or anything like that. I knew a few words in Blackfeet, so, you know, I'd tell him, come here and sit down and whatnot. And I told him, I says, book's a book one day to come here, and he'd come over. We were trying to sit down for lunch, and he's sitting there popping up and jumping down. He says, books to books, books to books. And he kept going on, and I just let him go. And I said, oh, we're going to eat, you know. And so we all sat down and ate. Later, when it was nap time, he says, Teacher Kenneth, what is that? And I said, so that means come here. And, you know, and so he was open to that, and that the light just turned on, and he was interested. And that's when I knew I needed to pursue higher education further, so I can expand this. And that's what I ultimately want to do with this program, and why I've invited everyone here, and we offer the continuing ed units, is we want this congruency between everybody and these partnerships to continue. That at the Head Start level, at Inkusum in your immersion programs, and at the state, if we could figure out something where we're working together to promote this, because we're all in the same pot trying to figure out what we want to do. And I think this idea of coming together, and not just as one set of people, but as a group of indigenous peoples. Not, oh, I have my Salish language here, and I have the Blackfeet here, and all these other representations, that as we build this conference, we can come and share and say, this is what works, and where we're going. And I really enjoyed all everyone's talks. And what really struck me as a psychology major is the idea that Maslow had went in and and observed the Blackfoot and seen that this is, he come up with this hierarchy of needs out of that idea from interacting with that population. And so I think of it as two different things, as this is my rock. And here's Maslow looking at that rock from here. And here's everyone else looking at that rock from here. We're looking at the same thing. He's looking at it at a different angle. And he got his angle in and everybody's following that. But our angle's still over here. And that shows that we still have relevance and something to bring to this system. And one thing that wasn't mentioned is we have the hierarchy of needs, and we're all right here. And there's our talk that comes out. You know, that smoke that comes out of your lodge, that's your heart. That's what's in here. That's what comes out. And if we could build that down here, you're going to have better smoke. And so as we come together as peoples and all of that, you know, he talks about this self-actualization and where we're at, and you have to meet all these needs. You don't have to meet all these needs. That just limits the amount of smoke that's coming out of the top. And if we could build our fires and have strong smoke out of that we can, even though we're not perfect, no one can claim to be perfect, but there are parts of us that we're still putting out there, that we're solid. I have this and I can do that. I don't have the language perfect or fluent in any way, but I have that drive and that passion to do it. And I want to bring everyone together to share in this. And it's so some of the stuff that we've done is we're trying to build a library, and this is where I'm urging everyone from our different tribal nations to donate to our club, because we want to build a library. We don't want to be just one language. And if you have materials and stuff you want to share with us and donate, we're building a library. And I'd like to thank Inkusum for donating some dictionaries to our program. And so we have that. So when other people come in, it's not just, oh, we're moving into someone else. If someone else wants to pick up a different book and use that and promote that one for while they're here, then more power to you. And so if we could start building this library, it would be great. And so the idea of the future and how we're going to expand this program is, you know, take this back to where you go. Start your club. You know, we can start it in high school. We can have that transition from K through 12 up to here, that it shouldn't be you just come and then you're thrown into this and you're saying, well, what is it? Well, I've already experienced that all through school. So now I have this consistency and that transition to higher education, that I have that outlet because I'm used to seeing that in the school district or at the Head Start or wherever you might be, or maybe you went to a tribal college and they have a Sacred Roots branch there. And that's what I'd like to do in the future is to have this as a nationally recognized kind of program that we're not just in Montana, we're throughout. And it's a lot of work, you know. It doesn't matter where you step, you're breaking new ground. And it's hard for one person to try and go 20 different ways. Like I see Danny, she works very hard and she's over here and she's over there. And I'm like, man, she must have like 10 arms or something. I'm trying to do this and run in one spot. But I know it's a challenge. And I ask that everyone take this back with you and communicate with us. We want to promote this program. We want to build our libraries. We want to be a part of everyone's system, so that this conference, we're not too big right now, but I can see us overcoming, you know, these challenges and having technology be a part of that. That, you know, I was shown the app the other day, and I says, I just had the old version, and that's what I was playing with, and to see that moving forward, that if we take the idea of culture as being dynamic, you know, with the reference about the Indian and the horse, we didn't have that, but when we got it, we were very skilled, you know. So if we're dynamic with our culture and moving it into the future and saying, well, we want this technology and we want this, and we as a people we have to band together And what it's gonna take is us growing. Growing is one. And I don't know if I went over time or anything, but I forgot what the question is already.
Strong smoke.
Good smoke, yeah.
But yeah, remember your good smoke. Hold your fire. Follow your dream. We're all a part of the same law.
Oh, is it my turn? So I'm Danny Yarbrough. I'm a member of the Sacred Roots Language Society. I'm an officer. And as Ken said, I kind of wear many hats and here and there, wherever I need to be. And I came to Montana just a little over a year ago to pursue my master's in linguistics. And during my first semester, Dr. Mizuki Miyashita, who's our faculty advisor, let me know about this club that Jesse was starting up, Sacred Roots Language Society, and I thought it sounded really interesting and really important. I think as a linguist, I think language is obviously a passion of mine, and I think so much is tied to it, so much culture and history and knowledge, and you know, we need to preserve that, and especially in situations where it's endangered, you know, bring that back. That needs to be a very important area of focus. And so I thought I'd get involved, and from the very first meeting before we even officially recognized by the university, I was hooked. I knew I wanted to be involved, and we started in the spring semester putting together the Save Our Languages 5K run. And it was a lot of work, but it was absolutely worth it. The way that the community came together was just so inspiring and so amazing. And we had a great turnout, more than we expected, just over 100 people. And we'll be having the run again this year, this coming April. It coincides with the Kiayo powwow. So I'm looking forward to having a bigger turnout at that event, and I know we will. The way that our events are going, especially this conference, the support we've received for it has been fantastic. And so I really look forward to the run that's coming up, and I ask that all of you feel free to participate. We have an adult 5K, and then we have a children's run that accompanies it, on cue. And for a few things that we have here at the conference itself is to put on these events is obviously quite costly. We've got food and catering and permits and everything like that. So the support we get from our community is really what enables us to put these events, to give us a place to gather. And to do fundraising, we have shirts like this lovely one I'm wearing for sale out in the lobby along with raffle tickets. Shirts are $15. The raffle tickets are for the prizes. We have 2 Indigenous artists. We have prints from them. We have a pair of tickets for Gabriel Iglesias tonight. The Fluffy, was it Return of Fluffy or something along those lines? I don't follow it. But I know it's a popular show. We have 2 tickets that we raffled off as a pair. And then we have 2 $25 Visa gift cards, a $10 Starbucks gift card with one of these shirts. So raffle tickets are $10, $10. It's more formal, huh? We ask that you participate if you can. That would be wonderful. And then putting this event together was a lot of work, but we're glad to see that everybody's enjoyed themselves. We've had some excellent talks, and just the environment and the atmosphere is great. So I want to thank, of course, officers for putting together all the work, Mizuki Miyashita for all her advising, and I see Phoebe Hunter has snuck in here, and she's been an excellent help. Anytime we have an event for the club, she's more than willing to walk us through every step of the process. So to thank Phoebe as well. Thank you. I think that's all I have to say. My talk's not nearly as long as yours. You can have some of my time. Well, you could always talk more, but thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, nisto ni Tariku Tatsuki Kanase. Anagogam Skapikani. So hello, my name is Bright Shining Little Star from Southern Pagan. And while not a part of the conference or anything, I got asked to speak. I don't know why. No, well, I grew up in Browning, And I attended the Cutswood School, K through 8th grade. Apanaki was my K through 4th grade teacher. She taught me a lot. She taught me the basics, the grounds. Then I went into the Idekakaku, which is the older kids or the lost children. And well, learned a lot there. From about 7th and 8th grade, I started teaching the younger kids, helping teaching. I just like Dr. Dale Kipp. He's just a big influence on my life, huge influence. The language revival, which I kind of wanted to speak here, in my opinion, is I love it. Since I grew up with it, it's something I do all the time. I try to speak as much as I can to my extent. I just do it. I don't know what to say.
Oh, speaking of the late Apinakuapita, Daryl Robes Kipp, who I'm sure is a big influence on a lot of us here. One of the things he always instilled was his 4 rules, and one of the main ones was show, don't tell, you know, and because of that rule, it allowed the Nitsi Boksin Immersion School to exist. You know, it allowed people to start just doing things and getting things done without really knowing even how or where to start. You know, you just jump in, and once you're in, then you start seeing all these aspects of it and different things as the Nkusum presenters talked about. But, you know, and it was just that action-oriented mindset that this group started. You know, as soon as we start talking, we said, well, we want to do something. Let's just do a run. You know, and we didn't know anything about a run. You know, I don't think I've ran since I got out of the military. You know? So it was just one of those things, but we found outlets, you know. We found outlets with the YMCA. We found outlets with people who put on runs previously, you know, and they came together, you know, people communicating and talking. And you think, well, if we could do something like that as small, if we keep this up and keep networking and keep talking, you can imagine how far we can go, because there's so much power in language. You know, this was just a small 4 group of people at the start of it to expand it out, you know, and we're planning on growing. We don't see the finish line anywhere soon. When we were planning our budget, you know, we were a new ASUM recognized group. You need 20 signatures. You got to go to this meeting and put in this paperwork. And so we started working on that and got that together. And then we had a budget planning committee. So we got together with my officers, and I said, well, I want to do a conference. I want to do a run. And I was talking to other groups, student groups who've been in existence for a lot of years. They were requesting, you know, maybe at the most 1,500. In a budget committee hearing, they announced that there wasn't a lot of budget to be given out, you know, so be really specific on what you need. So I started planning out, you know, some estimated numbers and costs. And I said, well, I'm going to ask for 10,000. And everyone looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, well, why not? I said, if you're only getting 60% of what you asked for, if I ask for 10, then I might get 5, you know, I might get 3, I might get 2. But I'll get more than you because you only asked for 1,500, you know? So on our budget hearing, we requested that amount of money, and we was fortunate enough to receive 3,000, you know, and we raised another 7 for this conference to help with the run and everything else. So it cost money, but to me, money is not a worry. Money is a fictional thing that floats around that we all stress over. But when we eliminate that and worry about the goal, those things come. You know, those resources present themselves. But we got to put in the effort and the work and the determination to get there. You know, and we can't cut ourselves short. You know, that a lot of people say, well, we want to start this, but we got so far to go, I don't know where to start. Well, just jump in it. You know, we're seeing in Nkusum and how much they've grown. They're steps and steps ahead of other people who are still sitting there figuring out, well, how many speakers do we have left? Well, that's not how my grandma said it. You know, those bickering between ourselves, that doesn't help anything. You know, that's not pushing us or advancing us forward. And we're all one now, like the presenters stated. We have a common enemy that's always been the threat. You know, we can't just fight amongst ourselves. In the history books in public schools, they always taught this tribe and this tribe are enemies. This tribe and this tribe fought each other. This tribe and this tribe, they don't get along. You know, but in our culture, we have stories, customs, ceremonies that we share with those tribes. We weren't always at war. You know, war is something new to our language. So we need to get together, you know, communicate. It starts with communication. And so I appreciate everybody getting together today, yesterday. But if I'd like to open it up for any questions or anything. I'd like to thank a few more people. Our shirt design was made by a local artist, John Peppian. We have another artist, Alan Knows His Gun, Upsala artist. We have a performance this evening from an artist coming in from North Dakota. Part of my dream, you know, I wanted to promote some local artists or whatever I could. You know, I'm not anywhere established, but I know what it's like starting out, trying to get your name out there. So if there's anything we can promote anyone else, and just contact me or my group. We have a professional website. Rebecca and Brandon Goff are amazing technical support, professional website. So we're here. We want to be the bridge to anything and everything involving language. So I'd like to open it up for anybody.
Can I say something before you do that? If you are interested in contacting the group, there's flyers out on the sign-in desk that have our Facebook, our Twitter account, our website, and our email address. So please take one of those so you know how to get a hold of us. And we'd love to hear from all of you. All right, now we've got a question.
How do you donate? Did you do it online or
You could pay me after.
There's a donate button.
There's on our website, there's a donate button. www.sacredrootssociety.com.
Yep.
There's a donate button.
And if you have materials to donate as far as our library goes too, send them to the university here. Label it to Sacred Roots Society. We'll start, we can build that as well.
Yeah, that's one thing when I started. I initially thought, well, we need a Blackfoot language class. Then I realized there's 10 indigenous languages of Montana alone. None of them are being offered. You know, and if I was to start a group of just Blackfoot language, it would promote awareness and it would grow, but that would leave out all the other indigenous languages, all the rest of that knowledge, you know. And at the University of Montana, we don't have as many numbers of certain tribes who are distant to Missoula. So we have a large majority of Blackfeet population, so we have a lot of active membership of who are Blackfeet, but we want to incorporate and include all indigenous languages. We have Navajos who are a part of our indigenous language club, you know, and although Navajo is Southern, it's still indigenous language, you know, so we invite any indigenous language, any materials, you know, whatever anybody has to offer, we'll gladly accept.
And I wanted to add to, you know, the aspirations that our club is looking towards and that the culture that we have in the state right now as far as promotion goes, that where we have our friends in politics can help initiate this change. That I grew up in Cutbank, and in Cutbank they don't offer Blackfeet language. And if you could promote languages to where you live, I don't know if Billings offers Upsaluka or anything of that sort, but all of these places have her. They offer Cree in their public school system. So in the idea behind Indian education for all, why aren't we promoting these languages in these schools? That if you're within a certain proximity to a certain reservation, you should have to implement that program. Because in Cutbank, we're a hop, skip, and a jump from the Blackfeet reservation, and there is a lot of representation of the Blackfeet there, but they offer French, you know. So how about something at least even for the other people? when you're getting cussed out in Crow and Billings, you'll know because you've seen it. You know, they call me that. Oh, that he's talking to me. You know, at least like, even at that level, and trying to segue into the public school system and figuring out that if we can initiate that law that you have to put this in, we can have our expanse, you know, grow with the public school system. I know that wasn't the question. Food for thought.
You know, what I'm really impressed with is we have 2 graduates of the immersion school that are now like coming out to teach. I mean, that really gives me a lot of hope that, you know, the people who graduated from the immersion school are now doing this on it. And so that to me really means a lot. And I just feel like the students here you're in such a rich position. You know, you could start your own Indigenous language think tank and look at how, I mean, we have so many systemic barriers. You could have, you know, that as a theme, also looking at the different applications in terms of developing language. You're in a rich place to do that. How to set up web pages and some interactive language. Maybe we could do all the Indigenous languages, but we can do it through distance education so that it could be done somehow interactively with the different Indigenous nations that we have here in the country. So I mean, I just think it's a really rich, and you guys are all very bright. So.
There is a digital academy that a lot of the kids are involved in taking higher courses than their schools offer. Maybe that could be a route that we could add the languages to.
Through Sacred Roots, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To get into the digital academy for the whole state. It's free to all the students.
Yeah, there's plenty more, you know, like I said, I'm not very technically advanced. When I got to school, you know, I didn't know anything about signing up or, you know, I barely turn on a computer coming from reservation, but I'm involved with a lot of these people who are very technically skilled, and it's very simple a lot of the times. It's just the ability of being trained or understanding, you know. And like we pointed out, technology can be that tool. You know, it's not the answer, but it's a tool. And if it can reach the younger generation, we need to utilize that tool. But as you mentioned, the immersion school graduates moving on, I wasn't the first to start a language group. I know there's been Cutswood graduates who started language groups in BCC, Blackfeet Community College, in the high school, and also in Montana State. I heard of a student starting a group of Indigenous language, you know, and you know, that movement has started a lot longer than for my generation, you know. Every generation is pushing forward and advancing further on, you know. So if we could take up the torch and move it a little bit further for the next generation, that's our duty, that's our obligation as immersion school students, you know. We don't just end when we graduate, it's a continuing, it's a life, you know. You don't just get to a point and say, well, I'm comfortable now. You have to keep going, you know, because the second we stop, we lose an element. We lose that knowledge. We lose all that we could have been doing. So it's a life, you know, it's a whole life's work. And I'm very thankful and fortunate for people like Daryl Kipp for teaching us that, for paving those roads, for giving us a blueprint, you know. Yeah.
And I also think that what Kenneth was talking about, that strong smoke and using Maslow, and there's this guy at Harvard, they say it depends on where you sit as to what you see. So Maslow was sitting here looking at the stages of development, but there's a whole nation of people who are also looking at that way of development. And this is a wonderful opportunity for me, or for all of you, to begin to take on that challenge one step further, like you said, and to begin to even remain rather than looking at culture. Culture is like another colonized name to sort of other us, to begin to look at our ways of knowing and being who we are and the richness. We've always had psychologists. You know, we've always had our own ways to deal with the difficulties, and using language as part of that foundation. And I just think it's really nice.
Yeah, I agree with you that, you know, that this contrast between where we're looking on one end and where you can see on the other, there are two different poles trying to come to terms with each other. And so you say, well, where do I have to give up here to move, to be still close to this? You know, am I gonna have to go get the education, but still hold on to where I'm at here? And you're fighting this identity and trying to be pulled over to here. And so with what you're saying as far as building that network is, how are we gonna keep these poles from pulling you right where you're not wanting to lose yourself? Because you're here, you don't want to give up that. And that's why we have this network. And what is that solution? That solution is strengthening this. And if we come together and strengthen that, that's going to weaken what this pole is giving from this end. And once we can start moving that way, well, it'll be that I have something, I have all these people, and we're bringing things to the table. You know, and that's part of the contrast is we have to offer some kind of, you know, continuing education units to show that this is something that needs to be addressed and looked at. And I hope that we can keep this network going and strengthen each other and pull away from that to get that perspective that is important.
And that may be one of your topics for next year's conference.
Exactly. But like, you know, I always think back on my experience in immersion school and all the things I've learned that help me out, plan things out through life, you know. But I was a part of the older kids group, you know. At first, Daryl's was had a kindergarten, K through 3, then he just kind of kept growing as students kept growing up and didn't want to go. But the older kids, we started a group, and I think it was Miss Big C and other teachers who come up with the name Itukskiteks, we called ourselves, meaning the lost children. You know, but I relate that to so many youth and so many students now. You know, we live that Itukskiteks. We are those lost children. You know, and it's up to us to learn our language, to learn our ways. That's the only way we can find who we are. It's not in Maslow's book. You know, his perspective is from the outside. It'll give us an idea, but we got to understand it from the inside. We're born in the inside. We have to understand it. You know, that's where the academic university system has to meet with our traditional knowledge. You know, and in some senses, that degree isn't as powerful as those transfer rights, as those songs, as those ceremonies. But we have to have both in this contemporary world to teach and be accepted. And it's possible.
You know, when you talk about that, when you said your Indian, the name was Itukskiteks, I think about what a guy said in, I went to NIA and he was talking about, you know, sometimes you have to be the lost children in order to make way. You may go on a path that's going to take you young people alone on that path. You may not bring anybody with you, but it'll be young people for standing up for our indigenous language. I could remember a time when I was a little girl and my father was very fluent. My mother didn't speak Black successful. You'll go on that path alone and it could be lonely, but you're going to teach your people something. And I want to tell you how very proud I am of you people, you young people, for standing up for our indigenous language. I could remember a time when I was a little girl and my father was very fluent. My mother didn't speak Black, but she could understand it. She could probably speak it, but she was Blackfeet. My father was Gana, and he used to tell me, "Midana, minetsto is istu Ganaki. Minetsto is nochtipo. You speak your language, be proud of who you are, because you know what, Creator, He made you, and you're not going to change who you are. You're just going to become this person is another face in the crowd. You need to walk down that street, be proud of who you are, and be proud that, you know, look at where you guys are today. I am so proud of you guys. I'm proud of my son, Kenny. It takes a big person to stand up there and say, well, I'm going to stand for my people and I'm going to do this. And you're doing it. You are you're living that name. You're walking alone on that path, but you're going to make it. And I'm very proud of you. I just want to let you guys know that. I am so proud of you guys. You don't know what it makes my heart want to know that you guys have come a long ways. Because I remember Cutswoods. When I started out a Blackfoot teacher, I started out with Daryl Kipp. My sister is Dorothy Still Smoking. They were the founders of Pagan Institute. She moved on and he bought her out and he continued on with his mission. And I know when Moccasin Flat was they first built Moccasin Flat, I was there. Shirley Crowshoe, Rosella Many Bears, I could name them and we traveled all over. He even took us to a Montessori school in Great Falls to show us that our children, they're free spirit. We have a spirit within us and we want to expand it. We don't want to be held back by a harness. Do you ever think of these little kids that have these harnesses that you can buy and you put them on them so they don't run away? You know what my grandmother told me? Why are they doing that to them? They have a spirit. Let them be who they are. Let them have their own creativity. Let them think outside the box. And that's what you're doing. I'm proud of you guys.
I would like to say something. Some things. I am very proud of all the students who are involved in preserving the language. It is a hard job. It takes a lot of patience. People will ridicule you for what you're trying to do, but the Creator gave you that knowledge of what you're doing now. Without the Creator and the spirit that you guys have in you, you would not pursue what you're doing now. As a teacher of Cutswood School, I started out with some little guys, little tiny guys about this high. Jesse was one of them. And every day they would feel bad sometimes, and I had a saying for them. I said, every day you guys are wonderful people, no matter what anybody does to you. And that was my motto with Cutswood School. All the time, you'll be the first to go. You'll be the first to speak. And these little guys, after that, they'd see me. And I'd say, that was the motto that I taught these children when they were little. They're growing up now, and I'm so proud of them. I walked in here, they're all sitting. I go back to this one, they're little tiny guys, just running all over. It's really a good feeling. And when you're preserving language, when you're talking about it, comes from here. You have to chew it, sleep, talk, walk, dream language. And that's how we're going to survive. And that's every day. Not just talk to somebody right now and then after a while, oh, well, hello, okay, take it what's it. No. Like I said, kita sip sa tama. Kita lang sa kasi spumulis. Spumu kinit sakit na spumu kinit to. Kaya mo sa stumas. Kaya kita kasi sip. Kaya ko umir kita kanubis. Kita day please. The same thing, about gather all the elders and just have a big conversation and just. One of the things I wanted to share with you is that when mom and dad made a decision, which they're about 105 now, 102, my folks, when they made a decision, they sat like mom sat here and dad sat here. Long time. What are we gonna do? God, wants to. Dad, you kind of rubbish too. So maybe it took 10 minutes to have that answer. So my dad had to give it a lot of thought what he was going to do. Don't make sense. He goes, not yet. I haven't reached the decision. And mom is sitting there and she said, well, I'm going to tell you again. What are we going to do? And they would look around and look and say, well, just do. What do you want to do? So it gave mom another 10 minutes to think about what they wanted to do. But the reason I'm saying that through life right now, everybody's always rushing. We forget to communicate anymore. We forget to talk to one another anymore. When we're sitting at the table, everybody's going to Burger King or somebody else to eat, and we're just rushing. As Native American people, sometimes we have to take that time to start talking, get our feelings back, get our thoughts together. It might take a little while, but they'll come to pass. So those conversations might be a little longer than we thought they would be. Okay. We talk to everybody. This is what I thought today. Good back to the storytelling. Okay, good.
I actually did a documentary on the revitalization of the Blackfeet language, and I just finished it up. We showed it in Browning, but actually a lot of the interviews I've done hours and hours and hours of footage, but what we ended up with is, as I thought of it, was those from the immersion school that came out with the actual really good input on the revitalization of the language. And actually Jesse was one of them in that documentary. Latusi was in there. Yeah, he was in there as well.
That was really well. We showed it in our Blackfeet language class. All right, we'll close that out. Our next panel discussion will be from some faculty members we have at the University of Montana. And the efforts that we're doing here, I'd like to share what we have to offer currently for anybody looking to go to University of Montana and be involved in language. It's not just a club, we have some couple linguists and a Blackfoot language instructor. I just want to introduce, and I'll have them speak on whatever they'd like, for as long as they'd like. They have an hour, but give them however long they want. Oh.
Oh, okay.
Those are the books that were back over
NIA was done at the same time. We checked it out. Set up a program called RAIN. At UCLA.
We'll see you. Thank you for having us. You're amazing.
Yeah, we could, postpone, we'll take a 10-minute break. Anybody wants any refreshments or anything? A little bit ahead of schedule.
Well, I don't work here. You keep that.
Okay, we'll start our faculty panel. I'll let the speakers introduce themselves, and they'll just come up one by one and answer any questions that anyone has, but they'll touch on what they're doing and what they have learned and the experiences of language revitalization and language teaching. So here, I'll turn it over.
So this isn't the panel?
Yes, this is the panel. Yeah. But,
I'll join you.
Kakak mo.
Please do.
Okay, kaktai ki sto titskasem moeske achta mantonsta. Nog to aanskap pikane ditseto be sianka so ko. Dan stoyem atsbo biksiko. Data ano umakkidesk sen maksudku itse taputa tehdään käyntiin.
Oki sokoveksi. Niistä on nokok mitsuki sasto matsuvatomitabi. Nitsi tahsittaki. Kite no so my name is Mitsuki Miyashita, and I'm a linguistics faculty here, and I'm glad to be here. My name is Mitsuki, and it means beautiful life in my language, Japanese.
Okay. Istuni tani kuaksen hikaki. Nitutu kaina. Nungti destiny match. Destiny match. Nitsikopi, tikisabisikopi, desukeskini matsai mi ahkiapuhtsani deskini matstuki. Kisami titita puhtaki. Keni tita apopi, titsine pamo, isesine pamo aputaksi. Tititsin inukskasaki. Nitsitskui tita anikia kitimu tsakatop samastuta putaki. So keni me matits kumatapa putak mada sami putsi pani nitsikupis ni. Nene no tito mi putsi mi tino nitsi porsin. Kistunan kipeta pisina. Siksikeita pita. Kistunan nite kuyuti. So kinom chitsku to no chito to tsmataks ni matsa. Na Jesse ni despumok. And siksita mitsi panom sikisnatsik pakitsi takya makats kumatapa o kanetsi usi anuksi totus ni matsa. Hello, my name is Bernadine Tallman. I'm from the Kainai Nation. I am a retired school teacher, and it was just by chance I came across the ads for this job here at the university. And so I applied for it and I was successful. So I had to quit my retirement and return back to teaching because I have a passion to restore and revitalize our Blackfoot language. I think it's important for the new generation that's coming up to know the language and be able to communicate effectively with our elders. I am pretty well versed in our protocols of our culture and our societies. And in my classroom, I try to
initiate different ways of introducing our way of life, that embody our oral tradition. So that is my goal, is to try and teach the young people our language, and I'm trying desperately to find ways of doing things, and it's unfortunate that our language isn't recognized as something really important, because my resources are really, I've had to depend on her to do my tapings, and my resources, I'm totally on my own. And so I'm kind of always looking for some kind of resource, pictures to try and depict the word I'm trying to have the students pick up. So if you're really interested in preserving, contribute anything, because I'm only working part-time and I don't have a lot of resources. So that would be something that the community can help with this program. So I'm glad to be here.
I'm gonna use PowerPoint. And then, we get about 20 minutes to be so thank you for the organizers. It's really important gathering that you guys have, and so I am also the supervisor for the Sacred Roots Language Society. And when Jesse came up to me in my office, I did start something like this. Okay, I just signed the paper, and he talked about he wanted to do something that's 5K run and conference. Okay, it's really challenging to do the conference. It is amazing, amazing team. I'm so honored to be working with you guys. Okay, so and he asked me to talk about what I do. So what I do, well, maybe some of you are linguists, and you might have some ideas of what linguists are. So I'm going to tell you about what a linguist is from my own perspective, through my own work. So working as a linguist in Montana, I'm an associate professor of linguistics in the Department of Anthropology. And so linguists, a lot of people think linguists are people who speak many languages, but that's wrong. Linguists are researchers who describe, record, describe, and analyze languages. And also there are many different kinds of linguists. And well, I'm gonna give you two extreme ends. One is an armchair linguist, also known as a theoretical linguist who sits in the office and maybe think about their own languages, coming up with examples and how does that work and that, and come up with a big picture of theories, principles of language, of human beings. And they could rely on other books on language, grammar of languages and something such and such. And those books are usually written by Dewey Feet linguists. Those linguists go out there in a field that's maybe not urban cities, and probably live with the community members for many months or years, and help them with farming and the household work, and get connected to their members, and then a few hours a week maybe get to work on language and collect resources. Okay. And these two groups look down on each other. Armchair linguists don't think that dirty linguists do a lot important enough, but it's not theoretical enough, it's not sophisticated enough. But dirty feet linguists think that armchair linguists are not doing the real work, but they are not in touch with the reality. So I am neither, but maybe somewhere in between, and I like it that way. But so I do a little bit of theoretical work and also go talk to native speakers and work on language or maybe a little bit of culture without have to make my theory. Okay, and then when you are working with the community members, then we have encountered a situation that the interests of linguists and community members are different. So linguists, what they, especially if they are in the academic fields, they have to work for their academic success, and that could be in the form of research or publication. But community members, it is language and cultural survival. Research and academic success is nothing to do with, I mean, it's not important, right? The cultural and the language survival is important, and could be in the form of language revitalization or language education. So what do? We need to recognize that two parties need have a separate interest, right? And then find their benefits out of the cooperation. And I'm also happy to have my Professor here. So this is my research whatever since I was a graduate student in student Ophelia. If I were to conduct the research, I want to do something that would be good for linguistics and for members of communities. So I got here, Montana, 2003, decided to work with the Blackfoot Nation, the Blackfoot language communities here in Canada. And so the first thing I did to go to Pigan Institute, called up the late Gerald Kip. He was very welcoming, and I was honored to be at the first teacher conference. We were there too, right? And then I got to sit with him a few hours, driving up there for 4 hours, and then had to sit for 3 hours and come back, and I repeated this few times, and I just got to learn what they were trying to do. And that time I did not know anything about the language. Just I wanted to do something. Then soon I learned about this. So Jesse was talking about his famous 4 rules in this booklet. Encouragement, guidance, insights, and lessons learned for native language activists developing their own tribal language programs. So never ask permission, never beg to speak the language, stop debate issues. Be very action-oriented, just act and show, don't tell. These 4 rules, the 4 different rules, but actually saying the same thing. You just have to do it. Start something right now. And these 4 rules are not just for the language revitalization, I think. It could work for any project that you want to start right now. So that actually helped me to go for the work and collaboration work with the Pigan Institute, especially with show, don't tell. Like you said, people will talk about, oh, I want to do something, and can I do something? But just do it and show what you got. Okay. So that was my first encounter with Daryl. And in the same booklet, you can find this phrase too. Don't hire linguists. They can speak the language, but the kid won't. And nothing against linguists, they can talk the language, but they don't act like this, and they are not. He's right, but something there's something wrong about this. This is linguists don't speak that not well. Especially first of all, the language is extremely difficult to learn as a second language, right? And so I wouldn't say they can speak the language, but maybe they know how to look at the grammar book and understand language. Yeah, but anyway, and he's right, we are recorders. Okay. So then again, coming back to my research model, I want to do something for linguistics and community. So how can I pursue my work to contribute to the language community? as well as being faculty member of UM, because we get evaluated for 3 things: teaching, research, and services. Okay. And some students think that we just teach for a few days a week, or few days an hour, and then we close the office and go home. That's what I thought when I was an undergraduate student. But tons of things we have to do. Okay. But at the same time, I do want to incorporate the community's interest as much as possible. So through teaching, I started to include language documentation component for introduction to linguistics when I teach that class. And I also developed a new course called Endangered Languages to raise the awareness of language endangerment throughout the world. It's a global phenomenon, not just here, all over the world. And when I teach bilingualism, I also include a component that talks about language shift and endangerment because of the bilingualism. And when I get to teach a graduate seminar, then sometimes I pick a topic of Blackfoot linguistics. And so for my research then, I have many small projects, but today I want to share 3 major things that I've done and I'm still doing. First one is the lullaby collections from the Blackfeet Reservation. This is a collaborative research with the Pigan Institute. Shirley Croshew was my research associate, and documentation, so description lullabies, we invited 6 speakers, but only 2 people remembered the lullabies. But we got to record 5 lullabies before they passed away. And copies, we made the copies and we took the copies, CDs to the Pigan Institute. And a few years ago, they were kept informed me that he got to play some of the songs that we recorded on the radio show. And that was really nice. He said that was a quite hit. So I was glad that what we did was used in the exhibition as well. Then also I want to disseminate the project, so I have a website through the university that talks about the late James Boyd and Shirley from Manoram Pigan, and talks about what the project is about, and also papers that we've written, and sound files of 5 lullabies. Okay. Then the second one is the natural speech recording. When linguists work with native speakers with an interest of doing the research, but what a lot of people do is to ask questions: how do you say this and how do you say this? With the mind of what I want to figure out is structure of the language, like how the pronouns work or how the relative clause work. Right? But the Blackfoot language has been studied for over 100 years. Then there are quite good grammar description out there, but not in the form of conversation, the connected speech. Okay. So if you look at the list of words that are recorded by linguists for the interest of linguistics research, it's just a list of words. Right? It's great. At the same time, when you start listening to the language in the form of conversation, language starts getting personality. And that, I think, would be something that could be preserved or recorded and be revitalized, the main thing. And it would be a good future reference. And also, I have transcription and translation, and also word internal analysis for linguistics interest. And the last one is the pronunciation project that I've been doing right now. So how Blackfoot words pronunciation works is the topic. And so it could be sounds like vowels and consonants. And also what I'm interested in the most is the word melody, which is how the pitch goes up and down. For example, there are 3 words here. All of them are consisting of 3 syllables, but all of them has different word melody. The first one is fox. It goes more flat and a little higher in the end. Cinnabar. And next one is starts from the middle, goes up and it goes down. Natayo. Then the last one out is Sipisto. And but when you want to make a longer words out of fox, adding the part that means small, it is not flat anymore, it goes down. Foxy. And Natayo, you can have a word like big Natayo meaning cougar or mountain lion. It also changes its word melody. Oh, Natayo. So this is something that I'm interested in as a linguist, and also might be a good tool for pronunciation guides. And also something that I'm just interested in, believe that is very important is a training of students, including non-native and native students. So we have MA program in linguistics, so most of them are not our Native American students. Also, I have students who are working with me, undergraduate students who are from the Mountain Tribes. And I like to do some creative application activities and also research. So for starting from training, linguistics class, regular linguistics class, and also a Bridges program, which is a summer program Kevin Kicking Woman was coordinating and do some linguistics work. And if I have a chance, and I encourage them to give a talk at conferences. And also I highly think of a collaboration. This is a pictures from when we were having conversations what to do together. And also creative activities. So this is some of the pictures that Becky Golf was showing yesterday when she was a student with me. We did the book creation, picture book creation, and also she made it into animated version, and we went to Catholic school and had the students participate in doing the voice for that. And that also becomes the services. Then training and outcomes of students that I studied with together, some of them pursue for their own different career further degrees like MA or PhD, and become language teachers, and become technology provider or specialist, and all of them do a really great job, and this is a rewarding for me. I'm not really producing them. They were that good already before they came to the school. So I am so fortunate that our lives crossed this point, and I'm so fortunate and I'm so feeling rewarded for being in this position. And also, I wanted to ask something more, a little more personal. Some people think I'm Chinese. Chinese people talk to me in Chinese sometimes, and Korean people talk to me in Korean sometimes. And Japanese people don't talk to me in Japanese, but I don't know. But I'm a mother of 3 children, and Japanese is my first language. I want to talk to them in Japanese. This is the language that I grew up. So what I do is to talk to them in Japanese. Okay, I've got a 9-year-old, 6-year-old, and 10 months old right now. Exclusively in Japanese. I don't talk to them in English at all. And their father doesn't speak Japanese at all. Maybe he can say sushi or nori or something. But and yeah. Anyway, so that's what I do. So being a linguist and studying other methodology of teaching kids for indigenous languages, endangered languages, and I try out all those things like master apprentices. So it's 101. So well, she speaks Japanese already, but to do cooking together so that she gets to learn words that we don't usually use outside. It's boil water, how you do it. The word for hot water and water are totally different in Japanese. but she didn't know that until we did this together. And I also do a language nest. Talk to the infant. In Japanese, the language nest is the native speaker and infants put together. So the infant imprint the sound of the language when they were young, even before they know what the language they were speaking. Right, so that's the point. It's to raise native speaker. And also language camp. Invite some kids and do the Japanese card game. And bilingual aid only when there's an English speaker in there. So I try to do all those things at home. So that's about it.
Hello. I'm basically a product of the school, actually. And as Mizuki could probably tell you, I was her student at one time. And for what it's worth, one of the most strongest classes I've taken was her phonology class, and it actually does help me as a teacher. And one of the ways that it helps me is that we have this sound in Blackfoot that one of my teachers calls, he just calls it the aspirate sound. And it's found in a lot of words, and one of them would be like, I comb my hair, which I don't really do much. It's duck, give me. So you hear that little puff of air there, duck, give me. And as a phonologist, the way I can help people say that sound is that a vowel is basically made in a certain position in your throat, where the ahs and oohs are kind of made in the back and the e's are made in the front. And it's a vowel that's made in the front of your mouth, but there's no voice. You're not rattling your vocal cords. So I have my students hold their throat when they say this word and duck, give me. And if their throat's moving during that, then I slap them. No, no, I inform them that that's where you're doing something wrong. So basically, with that knowledge, I can actually do a diagnostics test with someone who's trying to learn to speak these words and explain to them what they're doing wrong and what can help them do better. Because, I mean, that's really important, because the sounds that we use in everyday language is critical in actually speaking the language. And it didn't really hit me until I came to Missoula, actually, and I had this Japanese fellow who and he goes, hey, what is a cheetah? And I look at him like, what? And he says it again. I'm like, a cheater? You know, and he goes, my friend. Oh, a cheetah. And that's actually really important. So if you're gonna attempt to this privilege of speaking your language, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to enunciate correctly so that people who speak the language can actually hear it. And with that, and it's really important because there's certain sounds that are in our target languages that with the English ears are arbitrary. Like the duck, gimme. And a lot of second language speakers just simply say ducky, gimme, or duck, gimme. And a lot of fluent speakers have a hard time hearing that. And every time it hits me, I always think to myself, I, as a fluent English speaker, have a hard time hearing people when they say tita. So you got to put yourself in a position where, how would you react? So when you're speaking to someone who speaks the language and they give you this weird look, think to yourself, how do I enunciate more clearly? And phonology can help with that. With that being said, I'm here right now to talk on behalf of the university. So, and just before I begin, to inform you guys, I am an instructor at the Pagan Institute Katsu School. We have 22 students, as a matter of fact. Another teacher was here a little bit ago, and she headed out. This is Sato Stayaki, and she's a very lovely woman to work with. But here we go. So basically, I'm here to tell you that there are methods out there that are curtailed to help you teach language without using English. That's huge, because if we keep on translating our native languages into English, then they don't make sense within the target language. You're interpreting your language through English mindset. That's huge. And it's pretty tough on me because I have to be on my toes all the time. Because working for the Pagan Institute, I've been going on the radio, and I'll bring kids on the radio with me, and I'll just have them say random words and make them laugh, and and just to throw this out there really quick, yesterday in a presentation we talked about shame. I'm lucky I don't have shame. I'm serious, actually. I don't care if I mess up. That's huge. I've gone on the radio and I've butchered words. But you know what? Every time I say my statement, I say, if I say any word wrong, I'm open to criticism. And by me saying that, a lot of people don't criticize me. And then also, with that being said, I admit that there's some words that I'm going to say wrong. And with that, we have this girl at our school. Her name is Waterfall Woman. And I didn't know how to say it, so I'd go asking around. And I asked Mr. Earl Oldperson, Waterfall Woman. He looks at me and goes, I think you'd say, oh, skunataki. So I took that, and I started calling her that. But then the person who actually gave her name, Mr. Reggie Crowshoe from, I believe from Guyana. Huh? It's his northern Bicani. He told me, no, it's Taqueaki. And I go, oh, okay. And as soon as I heard it, it made sense, because I thought, our word for Great Falls is Taque. And it refers to the sounds of the waterfall. And that's the girl's name, Taqueaki. So basically, the reason why I'm saying this is that, Earl is a phenomenal speaker. He speaks Akeko, that old language. And I'll never question him. But still, the person who named this young girl said, no, this is how I said it, and this is why. So really, what I'm saying is that as a second language speaker, my interpretation, my understanding of the language is constantly being reformatted. And again, as I said, I got to be on my toes because, again, I don't have shame. I'm going to go on the radio and I'm going to speak because I want, ultimately, the main mission is not notoriety. I really don't care about receiving, and forgive me if I offend anybody with saying this, but I mean, I just don't care to receive eagle feathers. I don't care to, it doesn't matter to me, though. My only goal is to speak. Nothing else matters to me. And with that being said, I have to be on my toes, and I was at a grocery store once, and this old guy comes up to me and goes, and I heard that, and I said, he goes, taka, takeksa. And he goes, how are you going about getting your information? I said, oh, I'm inquiring, I'm asking around. He goes, who are you asking? And I said, well, the smartest of all, Bicani. And he had a good laugh at that. And seeing those are words I've never heard before, but I'm getting to the point now where I can hear certain things and understand what's being said. And right after that, he goes, I have a word for you. It's apo gatakdayamaya. And he goes, and it means, and I go, kika. Don't speak Naktiquan to me. And again, and I thought, and I was mulling it over, trying to, what does this mean? And I kind of looked at him and goes, does it mean something that's hanging upside down? And he goes, yeah. And I go, I don't get it. And he goes, bat. So it hit me. I'm like, so can I call myself Apo Katadayamayina? Can I call myself Batman? And he goes, no, you can't. No, but so then so I wanted to know how to say Batman. I'm serious. So I asked Earl, Oprah, how do you say Batman? He gave me a different word completely. I believe. I'll have to fact check that. I apologize. But he said, bat is sticks on the wall. And now, if I didn't know better, and if I couldn't hear what he was saying, I'd go, kika, you know, danik, I'm not going to do that. But it's because, you know, we always say, oh, these are descriptive languages. And with that being said, is that an animal could be described as different things. You can describe a bear as gayu, or buck, or even tisi, crop tail. It's all correct. You just need to hear those sounds. Okay, but so sorry, I got to contain this. In the year 2003, I had the opportunity to be an instructor for Anthropology 476, or it was either that or 467. That doesn't really matter to me. All I know is that I instructed it. And the class is called the methodologies within teaching Native American languages. And as a matter of fact, 4 of the people who was in that class as my students are in this room right now. And really, it's a methodology in which you get a vast array of images and you create what I refer to as a language landscape. And I'll get back to that term here soon. And really what this method does is you teach well over, and this number might hit you hard, you teach over 20,000 phrases in a semester, meeting up only twice a week for an hour and a half. And of those 20,000 phrases, 90% of it you'll retain. It's because what it does is it captivates and it engages the human brain as the human brain is supposed to be engaged and captivated. So from 1940 to 1990, there was the plane crashes attributed to pilot errors stayed about like 70%. So for every 100 plane crashes, 70 of them was attributed to the pilot's incompetence or mistakes, who knows. And it's really important to mention this because those 50 years, a lot of technology was created, a lot of textbooks were written, and how to combat this error, but none of it helped. They studied, they did diagnostic tests, you know, they would read chapter 3, what do you do when engine 5 goes down? You read it, but it didn't help. And I'm sure you understand why I'm mentioning this. Because we've had 50 years, 30 years of engaging in language revitalization, and it's not pointing the finger at us and saying that, you know, we have a lack of motivation, we have a lack of will. No, it's just we have a lack of science. Daryl Kipp's famous words that he says to everybody, and now his son says it, and it's the truth. He goes, there's not an instruction guide or a pamphlet about how to go about saving your language. So what really my interpretation when I heard that was there's really not science out there to describe to you how to go about saving your language. Now what happened in 1990 that made pilot error drop exponentially was the creation of the pilot simulation, where you go into the simulation and it engages your emotional brain. That's huge. We are emotional creatures. We're really not that logical. Ask any man. And but the human brain is phenomenal at picking up patterns. We all know that. We're all humans in here. At least I hope so. But and I use that because really what it is they're engaging in a flight landscape in which their brains are convinced they're in the air. And then the error comes up, engine 5 or whatever goes out, in this pilot simulation, and they have to do everything correctly in order to not wreck. And if they wreck, they failed. But at least no lives were lost. They retained their lives. And with that being said, failure is important in success. You're not going to success unless you fail. There is a thing called positive failure. I mean, I guarantee you, Steph Curry has missed more threes than he's taken, but because he's missed threes, he knows how to correct himself. The first time I've ever attempted to speak Blackfoot to a speaker, I said, "Nitzach umafin," and they busted out laughing. I said, "Well, what did I do wrong?" They said, "You just told me you had a boyfriend." And I was trying to say, you know, I'm a boy, like Pinocchio. But again, since I have no shame, it didn't bother me. And it was a positive failure for me because now I knew what not to do, what not to say. And now I know how to say I have a boyfriend. So I can tell. But I mentioned this because this is the method and how it works at its essential core is a language landscape. Now, what is an endangered language? You know, what an endangered language is you may or may not have a speech community. A speech community is basically a place where people speak the language, right? You go to Ottawa or France, what language is going to be spoken there? French, because there's French-speaking communities there. You go to Mexico or Spain, it's Spanish. Of course, different dialects, but they can communicate with each other. And not only that, the biggest thing about this is those are actual language landscapes. The French language and the French, country is a language landscape in which you're going to go there and you're going to know you're going to hear the French language. So although we do have speech communities, we do not have a speech landscape where you can go, I'm going to go to PMM or Town Pump and I'm going to hear Blackfeet because they're always speaking Blackfoot there. That's not the issue. We have to create a language landscape. And with that being said, a part of a language landscape is a place you go to and you actually are reminded of that language. So you go into there and maybe you've never learned the word, the English word teepee, or I mean actually that's a Sioux word, and you only knew it as Nikdoyes. And every time you saw a Nikdoyes, it hit you. I mean, every time people see a dog, they think dog. Me, I'm at the point now where I think that. And that's what I mean by a language landscape, is actually seeing things that remind you of these words, and that's critical. I can shoot images in your head because you all speak English. Hopscotch. I'm pretty sure most of you may have seen boxes. And that's how language landscape works. And what it is neurons that fire together, wired together. So we have to remember that we as human beings, our brains are curtailed to learn human language. But it's very important that you feed yourself that language correctly. That is essential. It's I mean, you can know all the inner workings and how much a hammer weighs and where it was manufactured, but if you don't know how to use a hammer and drive a nail, that hammer is useless. And with this methodology, ASLA, which is a trademark, which means Accelerated Second Language Acquisition, it's a tool that I, as a teacher, use. And it's important to mention, if you are interested in this methodology as a student, it's going to be fun. It's going to be the easiest class you'll ever take in your life, and you're actually going to get more out of it than a lot of classes. But as a teacher, it's going to be the hardest thing you'll ever do. And I say that because if you want to teach your language, you can't expect to give a worksheet out and have the kids go home and memorize that, because you cannot memorize a language. And this is where I'm going to bring in another thing that UM has to offer. So they have ASLA, native methodology teaching native languages. I really recommend it. The instructor is Nayachet Graymorning, and he created this language methodology, and he teaches his language, Hananayiti, or Arapaho. And yes, I know that there's probably no Arapaho people, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I want to learn my language. I learned Arapaho, and it helped me learn Blackfoot. It did. It's an Algonquian language, you know, they're cousins. And as a matter of fact, there's certain concepts that was easy for me to grasp in Blackfoot because I understood it in Arapaho. So for what it's worth, I throw that out there because it was just a beautiful experience that helped me engage and approach Blackfoot better. But another thing that U of M has to offer that I don't hear much in language revivalist conversations much is speech pathology. And the reason why I mention that is speech pathology is concerned with holistic healing. You take someone who has a speech anomaly or impediment, and you work with that person to become the speaker they want to be so they can be the human being they want to be. There's people who stutter that will not call and order pizza because they're afraid they're going to stutter too much. And the speech pathologist's goal is I need to get this person some pizza so that they can be the pizza eating person they want to be. So I want to help this person call on the phone and not stutter. And that's what speech pathology is. And the reason why I mention speech pathology is when you take speech pathology, they teach you, do not give word lists. It's not going to help. Because words are only remembered in context. A word means nothing without the other words that surround it. That's huge. I can just throw out any word and it ain't gonna make sense. But and really what that makes me do is I'm gonna play a game of semantics right now. And I don't I have, and you know, again, I apologize if I offend anybody, but I have zero interest in preservation. Zero. I'm not collecting fossils to put in a museum so people could come and look at them. I'm interested in usage. So if people ask you, are you interested in preserving your language? Say, no, I'm interested in using my language. And you know, and I'm a cynic, you guys. I get a lot of support back home, which really is good. I enjoy it. And people, oh, I support you. But I'm at the point now where I want to tell people, I don't need your support. I need your engagement. I need your participation. Your support is good. Yes, thank you. Your prayers are nice to have, but unless you're engaging and participating, we're going to lose, you guys. All of us, our languages, we're down by 20 and we're in the fourth quarter. If your top player comes up to you and goes, oh, I support you to win, it's all like, bro, we need you, man. We need you. But, and with that being said, is that, you know, and just to be real, the economy that we all live in and our languages are tied internally and intimately. And that's why right now, if you go to Hawaii, you'll hear Hawaiian spoke anywhere you go because the Hawaiian government and state, the economy is now intertwined with the actual language. Just by speaking Hawaiian, you're generating the economic value for that island. And it's not like that in Montana. We have, as Jesse said, we have 10 languages in Montana, so that right there is pretty tough. But we need to figure out a way to engage our economy within the language, and with that, you create more teachers. Again, I just want to say, I have no interest in being the only language teacher. I have no interest in criticizing people. I'm only here to want to help. But again, you know, with this methodology, ASLA, to me, it's water. And I can, as a horse, you know, you can bring a horse to water, but if they don't drink, that's their prerogative. But again, we're all thirsty for our language. And I'm telling you, and this is my words, no research involved, ASLA will help you speak your language. It will. And it won't just help you understand it, it will help you actually have things to say. Because, you know, you can say stuff like, 3 cats are walking. And that's what it's based upon. It's based on observation. And so everybody knows about TPR, I assume, total physical response, in which I would hold this up and say, Sako school, this is plastic. Or Uma Sinakiatsis. And you get it, right? That's TPR, but ASLA takes it to a different level where you actually understand that I'm not just saying open, it means, pen. It means a writing utensil. And that can actually refer to a camera too, because they write to our faces, right? And I've seen people draw very well. It's like a foreground. But what I'm saying now is that ASLA is concerned with getting you to tell a story, because that's what we are. That's why language exists, is that we yearn to tell stories. And that is the ultimate objective, is to tell each other stories. And I'm not trying to offend anybody, but teach a story before you teach a prayer. And because on the reservation, we all know in Indigenous community, our religious understanding and our relationship to the Creator has been altered in huge ways. On our reservation, we have atheists, we have Methodists, Catholics, Christians. Some of them don't want to pray, but some of them do want to speak the language. And also, I'm going to close up there. Your relationship to Creator, it requires no words. So, if you only teach a prayer, a lot of people are not going to take it serious, because some people want to pray to Jesus and some people want to pray to Allah. But everybody wants to tell a good story. And then I'm just going to throw this out there really quick. Reading Blackfoot, people say, our language is not written, but it's like, actually, no, it's written. It's just we don't have literacy. That's huge, you guys. And what I mean by this is that if you're going to read your language, you're going to experience something akin to dyslexia. Everybody's going to write the language different. Everybody's going to write it different. So actually, myself, and right now, I'm working with this Ninna from Rocket, who created his own writing system for the language that I, as a linguist, I saw it and I was sold right away. I was like, oh man, you're using symbols that Don Franz doesn't use, and by Don Franz not using these symbols, there's certain words that Don Franz's writing system cannot write. He can't write that. That and that writing system can't do that. So basically, by me researching Blackfoot and going through all these notes and these wordless people have created in the past, it's like I have severe dyslexia. Some people write with a G, some people write with a C, some people write with a K. It's tough. But again, I can't emphasize there's a difference between writing and literacy. So our language is so switch that. We're not oral anymore. People have written our languages. We have dictionaries. We have to stop convincing ourselves that we're completely oral now. And we need to make that stride going, okay, we do have written language, but now we need literacy. Why not translate American Psycho into Blackfoot or Harry Potter? It's possible. And again, our language revitalization efforts are limited to our imagination. Malcolm Gladwell, if you guys know him, his latest book is called David and Goliath, and it's about people who are at an underprivileged situation are actually have a glimmer of hope, because we know we have to have innovation. And the only way you can have innovation is through imagination. Innovation is the most important thing that we have to think of right now, and that's where I'm at, where I've combined linguistics and speech pathology. Because I know I have to innovate. I can't just be told something and accept it. I have to experience things on my own. And that's what language is. Language is experience. Every word that you have in your arsenal is experience. And again, every word you learn Try to use it somehow, even with yourself. I know a lot of dirty words. I always tell myself when I look in the mirror. But yeah, okay. Again.
If anyone has any quick questions for the three panel speakers? Yep, in the back.
Yeah, I got a question. You know, those, something, you know, like, you ever have these, moments where, I don't know, you just kind of have you know, something pops into your mind, you know, you hear it all the time, or you see it all the time, and then you just sit down and wonder, how come, why is that? But, you know, I had one of those 2 years ago, you know, some of these tribes, some of these people, boy, they got some pretty, rough accents. You know, I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about them, you know, they got some pretty rugged accents, you hardly understand what they say. And then, you know, you just kind of assume that this guy must speak his language, but they don't. They don't speak, they're not fluent, they don't speak their language, they might know about 30 words, but you know, that's about all they know in their own language, but yet they got rugged accents, so why is that?
I mean, my interpretation, and maybe Mizuki could answer this better than myself, but I think it's because the reason why we have reservation accents is a lot of those phonemes are derived from our original language. It's because, like, our grandparents who spoke their native language as a first language start speaking English as their second language. And as their second language, it had all those quirks and anomalies within it. And then they passed their second language on to their children as their first language. So, you know, like in my interpretation, like there's this, like we have in a lot of native languages, you could pluralize a plural. And that's why I think we say pantses. Yeah, things like that. So, I mean, I really do believe that it's just an after effect of our old language still permeating somehow within our English. Huh? Oh, yeah, that's actually really huge. A lot of those old people, and a lot of them are gone now, they would call he's, hers, and she's, and himses. That's because in our language, and I only know Blackfoot in this regard, that we don't necessarily have English pronouns. We don't have he, she. And yeah, so it was just arbitrary to them. He and she didn't matter. It was just the third person marker. Any other questions, comments, complaints? Huh? Any jokes? Okay, well, before we end, from the Pagan Institute, well, one thing that we kind of, you know, I'm not really a prideful person, but one thing that the Pagan Institute prides ourselves on is that, again, you know, it's Darius Ross's show don't tell. So I could tell you guys, oh, we got coloring books at home, but here, I'd rather show you guys. So some of you guys are going to get these, and you're going to answer a trivia question. How many reservations are in Montana? 7. Dana, you said first. Come up here and get yourself a collar. Okay, of the 10 languages spoken in Montana, which language is in Iceland?
Kootenai.
I think that was that you? Or was that, yeah, it was Anne. Okay, which is the only federally non-recognized tribe? You got it. And what kind of Indian was Rocky Boy? Chippewa. Okay, then for the grand prize, I have a documentary here about Vine Deloria, created by now the Pagan Institute's director, Darren Kipp. And the question I'm going to ask is, in which book does Vine Deloria talk about creationism versus evolution in an Indian perspective?
God is
Red Earth, White Lies. It's a good video to watch. Okay, anxious stop. Oh,
I wonder if you have been throwing in music at all in your lessons. When we were doing our rap classes, we kind of play around songs after translation. And then like the teacher and I hear these songs on the radio, watch me whip. There's like 12 words in that whole song. And like, I feel like you could transfer that to some translation. You know?
Yeah. No, again, you know, I mean, I said that, you know, in order to teach these languages, we have to be innovative and we need an imagination. So I wanted to teach, how do I teach these kids, where is this person? So I said, na, you know, na, pita, amoyo, chanita, pijitsuka, pimatawa. Or another thing, I wanted to ask people, what does they say? So I started singing, what does the fox say? Sa año sino pa, right? And again, you know, you just need to be innovative. Yeah, it's a very good tactic to use because everybody knows music. And again, like I just said, neurons that fire together, wire together, and music engages the whole brain. Language doesn't. Language mainly engages the left side of the brain with some quirks on the right, but music engages the whole brain. There's only two things, and language is one of them. The other thing, I'll let you figure out on your own.
I thought it was playing music engaged the whole brain. Is it also listening?
In some cases, I do know that listening, but I don't know about all cases. Maybe some people don't have that. But being a magician has helped me with picking up language because of patterns and recognizing. Because with Chuck, with desks and that means think clearly. Means teacher. Means school. So that esks is very critical to enunciate to get that meaning.
Yeah, just you talking about you know, how to make pronunciations of real important things. We hear it all the time. But as new speakers, we mess up.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you kind of touched on it here and there, but how do we do our best to get those right sounds, but we're not always doing that to our students?
Uh-huh.
I mean, from your point of view, do we have to wait till we have it, or?
I would say what I do with my kids is I get on them. I get on them. We have this, like, to say what is aksa. Everybody says aksa. You know, I get on them. I get on them. So, I mean, really the only thing you could do is what I've done is I made CDs for them to take home and listen to. Get it with a fluent speaker on that CD, and I tell them, listen to track 1 over and over, write it 10 times. Every time you write it, say it out loud, and then next Monday, if you can't say it, you got detention.
Well, as a teacher, I mean, maybe you're saying you're wrong for 6 months.
Yeah.
Because learn it that way.
Yeah, that.
And you realize you can say it wrong.
Yeah, that's happened to me quite often. With one word, puno komita. I was saying puno komita, and it's puno kamita. And yes, as a second language speaker, you know, I mean, all I can say there is that we have to hold ourselves to a high standard because, you know, if you don't speak your language and you are want to engage in language revitalization, you're going to be criticized. So I say embrace that criticism and constantly use it. But I mean, again, you know, I mean, I can only say that you got to work on it every night. But again, you know, we have a phonologist here who will probably be able to say something more.
Well, I have a lot of different kinds of experiences and opinions. But the one thing is that if you study second language acquisition, it shows that it is very difficult to acquire sound as an adult because infants learn the type of sounds that they need for their entire life within the first 6 months of their life. and then gradually they start losing the ability to identify those sounds, but doesn't mean that they cannot learn. So if we have engaged as much as Robert here can, probably we can get to the close point. But the teaching methodology is also something that everybody has their own preference too. Some communities I've met didn't want to bother with sounds because they would rather their children to start saying something even though the sound's not quite right, so that they can start talking, conversing. And some communities do care about the sounds. Yeah.
And I mean, I stood near Salish. Yeah, and you know, and geez, my prayers, my heart go out to you guys. You guys, you know, I mean, I'm not trying to. I mean, it's just you guys' sound system is a lot different than English, so I mean, I can understand that. But I mean, like one thing that I do is like we have this guttural sound in our language. So like a word like sakumape, sakumape. So what I have my kids do is I hear people on our reservation make these sounds like that Dutch kidney. I hear people make those sounds, but they're unaware of it. So the one part where they say the guttural sound is when they go ugh. So I make them do that constantly. Ugh. Now they say sakumape. And again, you know, you just got to be innovative and think of something that would help. Another one, the word I just said, school, a lot of people can't do that slipping K and S sound. But I always go say desks, desks, and then we have a matinee, cinema, desk cinema, desk cinema Tokyo. So again, I mean, just think and think and think. It is possible. But I mean, again, but there are some sounds that are going to be nearly impossible to do that with, and you just need to, again, make CDs, make an iTunes playlist for your kids. It will help. They'll listen to it too. A lot of them do. Some of you, and you'll be able to tell the ones who do and don't, and that's fine because, again, the nature of ASLA, this methodology I referred to, is the kids don't compete. They help each other. It becomes a nice speech community. It really does. One kid will stand up and go, no, you say me kami po-isan. You know? You straight up headdress. And it's really cool to see that. These kids is really acting like elders because they are elders.
Yeah. You know, the importance of saying things properly. I was adopted by my late father, Dan Weasel-Watson. And he only spoke the Blackfoot language. And so he gave me a name. And so I was going on telling people my name. My name is Badad, and it's Badad.